Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the On the Pony Express podcast. I am Billy Embody. Boy, do we have a lot to get to today. SMU coming off a tough 24-23 loss to BYU in that New Mexico Bowl. The Mustangs didn't quit trying to come back from down 14. They go for it at the end to get the win, and Tanner Mordecai is stopped just short of the goal line, giving the Cougars their fourth win and remaining unbeaten over SMU in the series. Look, we'll talk a lot about the game. We'll talk a lot about where maybe the roster needs to go next year. But we're also seeing a lot of work being done by this coaching staff in the transfer world, continuing to target top tier transfers. Honestly, you look at who they're after, there's not much out there that you kind of go, should they? They've been on it. They've been on it. They were back at it on Sunday. If you're not a subscriber to On the Pony Express, first of all, jump on board. I know a lot of you guys who listen are. For $10 for a year, this is going to expire soon. You can get access to ontheponyexpress.com, but you can also get one of the few On the Pony Express Founders Club hats that we have left available. So if you've subscribed and not gotten your hat, check the board. I'll bump the Founders Club hat thread where it has the instructions to redeem them. If you do subscribe, get in for $10 for a year, pick up your hat as well, and join us. We've had a ton of people sign up over the weekend. Appreciate all the subscribers who are throwing us some free marketing as well. If you're a subscriber and you get somebody to jump on board, and this is something I've always done, if you get somebody to jump on board, have them DM me, and I will give you a free month for each person you get to subscribe. So that goes for any time, not just during a promotional period. So check that out on the site. Please keep helping us build that subscriber base. Now, on to the goods. Well, a little bit of good, a little bit of bad in terms of the game, but we'll talk a lot about transfers. We'll talk a lot about roster. I'm going to try to get to some of those mailbag questions. What a absolute wild game. And it really was one of those games where it felt like Navy, and somebody made this comment on the board, it really felt like Navy at some points where you knew BYU, who started Soljay Maiava-Peters, wanted to run the football. We knew they wanted to chew the clock. I think we said that in our preview. I didn't get far enough in terms of how it would impact my over-under and score prediction. But look, 24-23, obviously a couple touchdowns short on that front in terms of hitting the over for that one. But I just felt like SMU was going to be able to move the ball a little bit more consistently than they did. And look, I didn't think, especially in the second half, SMU moved the ball pretty well. But there was too often in the game that was limited on possessions. But mind you, SMU still ran 87 plays. I feel like SMU got away from the run too much. There was a drive in the second quarter where SMU threw the ball 5 times, I believe, or 4 times in a row. Ended up, I think they punted or they turned it over on downs, one of the two. But that was one where you could have chewed a little bit more clock. You could have given your defense a rest to kind of help you in the second half a little bit. And by the way, the defense played great in the second half outside of one drive. It was just one of those things where Soljay Maiava-Peters, who's one of the better athletes in his class at quarterback when he came out of Hawaii, and I got a chance to see him a couple times, I believe, in high school, but just kind of slipped through tackles. SMU had him dead to rights on a sack at one point. Jalen Samuels didn't get him. I think he ended up throwing incomplete. They did not capitalize early in the game enough to get him on the ground when they had opportunities to. Nelson Paul got beat to the outside on a keeper. It was just not a perfect defensive effort, which no one was expecting. And, BYU still got a really good clip per run on the ground. SMU was just able to, in the second half, limit that outside of that scoring drive. SMU did grab an interception with Shannon Reed, only to see Tanner Mordecai throw an interception that was returned for a touchdown. Now, Gage Haskin missed a block, missed it badly, and that allowed the BYU player Bywater to go ahead and grab that and return it all the way for a touchdown. that was the play that when you're watching that game, you're like, all right, how does SMU respond? I believe BYU went and scored after that as well to go up 14, or maybe the interception was to go up 14, one of the two. But, SMU fought back. And I didn't think for a second they were going to lay down. SMU's done a really good job for the most part this season, save for the Tulane game, at battling back and trying to make a game of it. UCF obviously pulled away in the second half. SMU had to start pressing. They didn't hit in the red zone in that one. We know the story on both of those two games that ended up being a little lopsided. But as far as not quitting, SMU didn't quit. And I think that's something that, look, when you're on the board and you're in the moment, and last year or next year's team might be different. And next year's team might not have the killer instinct, or excuse me, it might not have that dog to fight. But I'm going to edge right now on the side with what we've seen that SMU will have that dog next year to fight, especially with the way they've added in the transfer portal and are going to continue to add. But when you look at this team, they never ever quit. They really didn't. You look at some of the guys on the team, Tyler Levine gutting it out, Roderick Daniels, who stepped away and came back after his father passed to play out the rest of the season, Jordan Curley coming back from injury, Tanner Mordecai playing through all he's played through this season, Marcus Bryant gutted it out, Owen Condon was gutting it out, Justin Osborne got nicked up at one point. A lot of guys on defense as well, just here and there. Bumps and bruises. Everybody's that way at this time of year. This team never quit. I think, look, there was a time at that game when they got down 14 and the way it was going that it could have gotten away from them. But I didn't ever really think they were going to quit. There was still a lot of time. There was just concern that the way BYU ran the ball on their last scoring drive, that there just wasn't going to be enough time for SMU. BYU was going to be able to milk the clock. And Scott Simon's defense, you got to give him a lot of credit. They found a way to get stops and give SMU's offense a chance to come back and win. They score. Kudos to Roderick Daniels. The play that he had both at running back and at wide receiver. You also had Jordan Curley make that clutch grab in the end zone on the final offensive play before the 2-point try for SMU to make it 24-23. I was a little concerned coming out of the half that SMU wasn't going to be able to shake what kind of was a ho-hum first half in terms of how they were offensively. They were out of sync. They didn't have a passing game or much of one in terms of consistency. They tried to push the ball down the field here or there, but nothing like we've seen all season for this team, which, I mean, look, they missed Rashee Rice. They missed Dylan Goffney. There's no question about that. And they missed probably having a truly healthy backfield. I think that factored in. I still think they got away from it too much in terms of not giving them, any opportunities at certain pockets of the game. But look, I mean, the second half, SMU found a way offensively. They were moving the ball. I mean, that interception is such a backbreaker. Obviously, it's not funny, but we talked about it on the board, and we talked about it last week on the preview podcast. What did SMU have to do to win the game? They had to take care of the football. And the teams tie in the turnover battle, but then the one turnover for SMU is a pick six. So it trumps the tying of the turnover battle. And instead of just a turnover and somehow SMU is able to maybe get a stop and you play on, instead it just flips the game on its head. And SMU's playing catch up from there. I thought the call to go for two was correct. I mean, look at what SMU was dealing with. Roderick Daniels got hurt. Jordan Curley got hurt. Tyler Levine was hurt. I mean, they were done out at a lot of spots, and it's a bowl game. It was 20 degrees. Go for the win. Who cares? I don't think this is a game that anybody looks at it and says, oh my gosh, no Pac-12, no this, no that. It obviously hasn't hurt recruiting by any means. This is a game that I think was just kind of just a perfect storm for SMU to lose. They were bad run defense all year. BYU was able to take advantage of that and, use 25-year-olds to kind of push around some, 20, 21, 22-year-olds at times during the game. And their running backs were all healthy. They were ready to go. And they came up with, some good scheming to put SMU on their heels a little bit defensively. I think going with the running quarterback was the right decision, obviously. Soljay Maavas really stressed SMU's defense at times. They were able to contain the passing game for the most part. I didn't really see too much separation here or there. I believe he finished 7 of 12 for, nothing really crazy passing game wise. But, SMU just had struggled to defend the run all year. They missed Terrence Newman. They missed Stephon Wright. They missed some guys in there that, weren't playing. And, I think they did their best. This wasn't a BYU team that wasn't necessarily good enough to beat SMU. I mean, you look at a pick six kind of being the deciding factor. I mean, you want to have that one back. But I think the thing with this team is they battled. They always battled, and they made it, a game at the end. They had a chance to win it on the final play. Tanner Mordecai stopped short. I didn't love doing all the shifting. I kind of thought that was like window dressing for what was going to be a QB draw in the end. And I believe Rhett Lashlee said he stuck with that call. And I think to an extent, I don't love a quarterback draw on a 2-point try. I think we've seen it here and there. The NFL with Josh Allen kind of makes it, something, Pat Mahomes does it. Jalen Hurts does it. I almost would have rather have loaded the box with an extra lineman and just kind of direct snapped it to Tanner Mordecai and just tried to just push the pile forward. I mean, I know how SMU's offensive line has been here or there, but just mash it ahead and see what you can do, and or do some sort of shifting, maybe to create some space horizontally, run some sort of jet sweep action with somebody, maybe, get that going. They picked up a 4th down with Austin Upshaw, who, was able to stick his arm out and get it across, and a good play by him on that. But this is one of those times where it just didn't work out for SMU. So I think kudos to this team. They didn't necessarily give up. They didn't ever lay down, and I think that's what you want. That tells me their culture was good. I think they were a team with obvious flaws throughout this season, and we all know them. The wide receivers had some drops throughout the year. The run game was inconsistent. They found it late in the season with Tyler Levine, who was banged up late against BYU. The defense was poor for much of the season. They had their moments where they stepped up, just like they did Saturday night, and gave SMU a chance to win. There were some times in the season where that happened, and they were able to have opportunities to win. But in the end, this team had some serious flaws to it. We talked about the tight end position going into this season. I think that's a group that they're going to have to address in the transfer portal and find someone. I know it's a tough position to find. They're bringing in Trip Reardon. They're bringing in Lonnie Johnson, 2 guys that are going to have opportunities to play early. You have RJ Maryland coming back. He's a stud. Ben Redding moves on, and they'll have Gage Haskin back, I think, as well. So, they need somebody to step up and kind of take on a bigger role. Cam Allen, Nolan Matthews-Harris, they hadn't shown anything this year to, really spark confidence. So maybe next year they can pick it up and improve. But until then, this is a room that needs an influx of talent, especially from the transfer portal. They need a bigger body. It's hard to find right now, though. Some big news, and then we'll talk a little transfer and kind of share some thoughts on the state championships from Texas. And then tomorrow, Tuesday, mailbag pod. That's what it's all going to be. SMU is losing Craig Niver, their safeties and special teams coordinator, to Coastal Carolina, where he's reuniting with Tim Beck to be his defensive coordinator for Coastal. Kudos to Craig Niver. He gets to call defense again. I think it was something that he couldn't really turn down with his ties with Tim Beck. They've been on, I believe, a couple staffs together now. So he heads out that way after one season at SMU. I think this was not something where he would have done it unless, he's getting his hands on a defense to call. That's obviously a big opportunity for him. He had just gone back to Texas. His daughter, I believe, goes to SMU. So that is a big deal for him. I think there's a ton of ways to unpack it. SMU had special teams issues this season. I think there needed to be some sort of shakeup in the offseason on that front. I will say it was thin pickings as far as the actual players on the unit, especially after some of the opt-outs that we saw earlier this season. Chase Cromartie, Isaiah Wacobia, Jalen Record, and the guys like that. They also had some injuries happen that impacted that group as well. But he did bring in Colin Rogers, a freshman kicker. That was a great eval. He looks like he's going to be one of the better SMU kickers for years to come. He uses connections to sign Ryan Bukchevsky, who was serviceable this season for SMU. There weren't any mishaps. It wasn't great, but it wasn't bad by any means. So, look, as far as the safeties group, they left a lot to be desired on the field this year. I do think, and we noted that, I would say kind of early on, this was a group that didn't have much, margin for error. You lose Chase Cromartie 4 games in. He wasn't contributing. Donald Clay wasn't contributing. Roderick Robertson wasn't contributing. They had a lot of guys in that room that weren't contributing. So when you look at trying to piece that group together, it was an uphill battle. Brian Massey did not live up to expectations. Brandon Crosley was inconsistent. The best player at the safety position was Nick Roberts, who Craig Niver brought in. And Ahmad Moses, late ad for SMU in the signing class, looks like he's going to be a great player. Talk about having a great finish to your season. Ahmad Moses is a huge stock up type of player for SMU. You look at him in that secondary with some of the transfers they've added. I got to pencil Ahmad Moses in as a starter next year. That's what he showed down the stretch. And so he looks like he's going to be a good one for SMU that Craig Niver brought in. They have Jonathan McGill on board in the transfer portal. More safety help on the way, I bet, in some respect. And they're also loading back up on the secondary. So he also is going to sign Jaden Milliner-Jones for SMU. He's going to enroll early, a state champion now at DeSoto. And Abdul Muhammad was somebody that they brought in kind of looking like a depth piece probably, but that was a kind of a Keenan Hall addition with Randy Reese, and you get Craig Niver, bringing in Jaden Milliner-Jones, who looks really versatile, physical. So SMU is going to miss him in some respects. There's room for improvement with that group at the safety position. There's room for improvement in special teams without a doubt. So Rhett Lashlee has his first kind of coaching search underway on his staff, somebody that he's got to replace. Wouldn't shock me if we see maybe some tweaks to the staff just in terms of responsibilities, maybe. But look, this is a position that is very important in today's college football. I think you need somebody dedicated to it. So I'm intrigued to see what SMU does on that front. So Craig Niver out the door, 1 year in to SMU, one of the good guys out there. So we'll continue to kind of track any other coaching changes that happen. Obviously, it'll be interesting to see what happens when silly season kind of gets underway. And there will be a couple waves of it. There'll be, right around now. And then there's going to be after signing period as well, that there seems to be staff shakeups as well. So on to kind of the transfer portal news. Look, again, if you're not on the site, jump on board, $10 for a year. Lots going on right now with SMU on the transfer portal front. I dropped multiple On3 recruiting prediction machine picks on Monday. Check those out. Those are all on there. And I think in terms of what to expect right now, this is going to be as good of a run as anyone's in the country. And I'm kind of ready to make that prediction. You look at Florida State and Michigan; those are two schools really having a good run at it. USC probably is going to have a good run at it, and there might be higher end talent that goes to other schools that trumps SMU's. Arizona State's going to be one. UCLA, TCU obviously is going to be one. But I look at what SMU is starting to do, and in terms of pure talent, this roster is going to look night and day. And it's just crazy to watch. It's a credit to Rhett Lashlee, his staff, recruiting staff, everyone involved. They've balanced this so well. They got in at around 4:30 Sunday morning from the game. They had flight issues. They were back up on campus that morning hosting transfers, hosting players, meeting with players. This is not by accident that they've set themselves up for this. So you've got to give them so much credit for where it's going. So check that out. There's a lot to run down. I think we're going to see at least 5 more transfers for SMU commit They already have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 transfers on board. I can tell you they have probably at least 3 silent commitments right now. If you want more information, check out the board. That's all I'm going to say. I would say you look at the positions that need to be prioritized. And offensive line is still one that I feel like they're going to address. Metcalf is one to watch for SMU as well, with his teammate Jonathan McGill already on board. PJ Williams, who visited Colorado this past weekend, Prime is circling him. We'll see if SMU can pull that one off. There are a lot of players that have been linked to SMU that are trending the right way. So go ahead, check that out. I think when you look at where things stand going into the early signing period, we're going to see some players put pen to paper Wednesday. A lot of I'm not hearing of any flips late, so we'll kind of keep an eye on it. I did make a new prediction for an on-3 RPM pick for a 2023 recruiting target as well. So Wednesday is going to be a start of some fun for SMU on the transfer and recruiting front. That's the first day guys can sign. And they're not going to be done. There's going to be a lot more to come. I think it's going to be interesting how tight end pans out. It's a thin position overall nationally. A lot of reaching, a lot of players that might not fit that well in other spots. So SMU really has its work cut out for itself to find a tight end that they really probably can use and develop right away and really get going with. So I'm interested to see how that pans out for them. They need one badly. I think they need a big body to plug in there. So I'm going to be watching that on the transfer front. Now, to kind of cap this podcast, I was out at the state championships. I did watch the bowl game while watching the Duncanville Panthers win their state championship with Coach Samples finally getting that one, which was fun to see for Dallas. But look, South Oak Cliff started it off for Dallas Friday night. Abdul Muhammad helped the Golden Bears win their second straight state championship. They just were able to find ways to win that one and beat Port Neches Grove. They pulled away, and it didn't end up being close. Malik Muhammad, who had an interception returned for a touchdown. They just did a great job, top to bottom. I think the Golden Bears are certainly here to stay, but they'll have their work cut out for them next year. They lose a senior class. It's very, very impressive as well. So another one, 6'6" wide receiver Trey Jackson. I really liked him. He's a basketball player in the class of 2024. Looks like he's going to start getting some recruiting attention as well. In terms of SMU, if you're looking for a big body kind of wide out type, that's one to circle. I was very impressed with him. Moving ahead, DeSoto faced off with Austin Vandegrift. Jaden Milner-Jones had a really strong game, playing kind of all over, again, linebacker, safety against Vandegrift. Again, DeSoto kind of pulled away. It salted away for them. And I've covered a lot about Jaden Milner-Jones. I've seen him a lot. I like what he's going to bring from a versatility perspective. He's going to enroll in January. But on the flip side of things, Damian Wimberly, SMU's defensive line commit that played for Vandegrift. I got to be honest with you. This one is a guy that I'm really excited about for SMU. 6'5"-ish, almost 6'5", 260 pounds. He's got a 6'10" wingspan. He tested off the charts. And look, I think when you're playing defensive line at the high school level and you don't come off the field, it's very hard. They didn't rotate him off much at all. He played pretty much the whole game, and DeSoto had their way with Vandegrift in a way. Or excuse me, DeSoto had their way with Vandegrift in a way, so that kind of made it difficult. They were out there for long drives. But you look at the tools he has. He's got a great spin move when he applies it. He is bigger than I thought. He carries 260 very well. He's got big legs, and he's just a terrific athlete. He seems well liked by his teammates. He was, as one would expect, very emotional after the loss. I just think he's got off the charts potential. If Calvin Thibodeau can tap into that, it's going to be very, very special. He's set to sign with SMU on Wednesday as well. So a big, big land for SMU to keep him. And then Duncanville capped things off Saturday night with their state championship, beating Houston North Shore. We saw so many players make plays. Obviously, 5-star edge Colin Simmons won the player of the game. He was on SMU's campus. I think he's going to go somewhere else, but a very talented 2024 prospect. And then Caden Durham, the 2024 running back that SMU offered and who has been on campus, won the offensive MVP. He was terrific. I think Keelan Russell is an unreal sophomore quarterback in the state. He's a class of 2025. He made a ton of plays. So I think he's got a bright future. And then Tyron Polley, another one that is coming up, a class of 2025 safety. I think SMU is another school that really will be all over him. Duncanville finally gets that state championship. It was a wild one. They were able to hold off that comeback and score and hold off North Shore late in the game with a fourth down stop. So pretty wild, unreal time at AT&T Stadium for the Texas State Championships. Now we turn our attention to the early signing period for SMU. We'll have a very long podcast tomorrow. I'm going to get up and record that one. Lots to do with the early signing period here for the Mustangs. Be sure to get on the site on theponyexpress.com. $10 for a year. Hope you guys enjoyed this podcast, kind of putting a wrap on some things. We will talk a lot more tomorrow. Long version of the podcast, and then one to recap the early signing period coming at you as well. Hope you guys have a Merry Christmas early on in case I forget to say it on the next two podcasts. I'll be traveling down to Florida Tuesday afternoon to start that off with the fam. Hope you guys travel safe around the holidays. I will catch you guys tomorrow with another edition of the On the Pony Express podcast. Hit that subscribe button to our YouTube channel, please. We appreciate you guys growing this channel, and we will catch you next time with another edition. Thanks for listening.